Hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation on Oberon indoor applications for blending wireless access points into the built environment. I'm David Knapp, Product Manager for Wireless Mounting Solutions with Oberon, which is a division of Chatsworth Products. Today, we're going to talk about the basics of indoor wireless, basically why the telecommunications consults keep putting those little boxes or additional outlets all over your reflected ceiling plan. We're going to talk about blending wireless access points into the built environment and how it can look. We're going to go over a few more reasons why you might want to consider a wireless enclosure or a mount, and I'm going to show you some of Oberon's solutions. I want to start with a little bit about Chatsworth Products, which is our parent company. CPI is a designer and manufacturer of ICT infrastructure and industrial solutions that power and protect your technology investment. We manufacture all types of products that hold telecom equipment in data center, enterprise, and all other environments. Today, we're going to talk about wireless enclosures, which is the product line supported by Oberon, which is a division of Chatsworth Products. All right, now we're going to talk about the basics of indoor wireless networks. So wireless access points are what you see on screen here, and these are the devices that create the radio signals that connect our wireless devices to the network. In most instances, these are small devices that are attached directly to the ceiling or high on walls. These systems are line of sight, so they're short range, and their placement is carefully designed to optimize coverage and connection speed. So their placement may conflict with other building systems or the overall aesthetic in your space. Now in this presentation, we're going to demonstrate some ways to blend these devices into your space design, and we're going to discuss certain applications where additional physical security or an enclosure is necessary. So this image on the left side shows your typical out-of-the-box install for most wireless access points. Most wireless access points include a basic mounting bracket that will attach the AP to a standard suspended ceiling tile grid or flat to a surface or against a wall mount box. So on the left, you're seeing that attached to a suspended ceiling. On the right side, what you're seeing is the alternative for a suspended ceiling enclosure, and it creates a secure space for the access point and network connections. The access point mounts through the door, so the antenna plane is below the plane of the ceiling, so you still get radio signal. But you can open the enclosure door and access the rear of the AP or network and cabling connections that are inside the enclosure. So there's a non-locking version of this application also that uses a torsion spring trim, and it's a lot like a light fixture. And you can use that to attach the AP flush to the ceiling tile also. And there's also versions that will go in a hard lid ceiling. So if the AP can't be attached to the ceiling, the next best option is typically high on the wall. You get the most coverage when an AP is in the orientation you see in these photos and when it's high on the wall. So these right angle brackets allow the AP to be mounted that way. There's two examples here. The one on the left is an airport and the one on the right is an auditorium. Now on the right, in a large space or where there will be a large number of potential connected devices, there's going to be more access points to support those connections. So here's some other examples of right angle brackets. The image on the left is kind of a more stylish wall mount. You can see the AP's held in a spring trim like that first enclosure image, and it's in a locking enclosure. That enclosure also can be painted to mount whatever the finish is. On the right side, there's a simple L-shaped bracket where the AP is exposed, but both of these are designed to mount over a telecommunications outlet, and so it hides the connection to the network. Here's a few examples in open ceilings with different types of architectural treatments. On the left side image, you see some sound baffles to hide the open ceiling above and provide acoustics. When you place an AP in this situation, you want it slightly below the sound baffle so that it provides good coverage in the area below. And so the typical solution is to place a standard junction box at the end of a hanging conduit, and the AP just mounts to the surface of the box, and there's usually exposed wires. So here's the APs enclosed in one of several AP-specific box mounts, and in this case, it's trimmed like the full enclosure on the previous slide. In the large box mount, it hinges open, so all the cabling and network connections are hidden inside. In the middle image, you see a decorative cloud ceiling, and the AP is placed at the edge of that ceiling and above it, where the open ceiling components have been painted black to obscure them. The mount is actually an L-shaped bracket, and it's got beam clamps, and it's also got a black colored cover that goes over the AP with a Velcro-like attachment. So most APs are white in finish, and you shouldn't paint the AP directly, but you can paint covers to match the coloring in your environment. That makes it blend nicely and lets you locate it so that there's good coverage in the space below the cloud ceiling. The right side is similar. It's an acoustical ceiling. Note the angles, and it's similar to the middle image. The AP is mounted above one of those intersecting open areas on the truss and is using the same L-shaped bracket and beam clamp. Sometimes APs are surface mounted on a wall and they're in the vertical orientation. When that's the case, you can hide them in a locking surface mount enclosure. These enclosures you see here have been painted to match the finish in the space. I really like the one on the right. They took a lot of time on that. So it shows you an example of how, if you have an architecturally sensitive space, you can match that finish. The other great application for this type of a box is to protect the AP, and that's typically used in something like a gym or school environments. Similarly, there's outdoor rated enclosures that can be used indoors or outdoors to provide additional environmental protection. For example, if this was a warehouse or an industrial environment, or even in some instances, if it's a hospital where there's wipe down. Here's a few more examples of just basic covers used to blend the AP into the built environment. Okay, here's a few examples of environmental enclosures used outdoors. This is a presentation generally about indoor built environment, but your environment extends around the building, and it's very, very typical that Wi-Fi is going to be needed to be provided around the perimeter of the building. So outdoor APs, they're rated for being mounted in weather. You don't have to enclose them, but often there's always the same network connection, and there's often external antennas with an outdoor AP. So these enclosures give you a way to cover that, provide a nice look, and also protect the components. The one on the right is a bollard. It's ground mounted, and it gives you a good option if you can't pole mount or mount to the side of a building. And all of these can be painted. All right. So what's some other reasons that you might consider a wireless enclosure or a mount? First one would be optimal placement, which we briefly hit on before. Basically, when your non-standard mounting solution that comes with the AP will not place the AP where it needs to go, you'd want to consider a wireless enclosure or mount to keep the orientation right and to keep the elevation right so you can maintain the signal coverage. There's instances where you're going to need added physical security for the network connection. And with that in mind, consider the cost of downtime and the cost of having to have a technician come out and do work. That's the third one, which is easy access for technicians. APs change every 3 to 5 years. So although you'll place this enclosure and it may stay there for a decade, the AP that's in it is going to get changed out 3 or 4 times in that period. There's code requirements for plenum ceilings, and there's code requirements in seismic applications that enclosures and mounts can address. In your hospital environment, enclosures can be used to address infection control procedure concerns and to allow access to equipment without disturbing adjacent drop ceiling tiles, for example, and not having to tent a space. Once you put the enclosure in place, you tent it the first time, but after that, you're simply opening the door and it's a completely sealed enclosure above. Next thing is in behavioral health. You can use enclosures to address ligature resistant requirements. And the final one we talked about is outdoors. You can provide additional physical protection for equipment and people. Let's take a look at some of Oberon's product solutions. Here's some examples of our Y-tile locking enclosures. These are the locking ceiling mounted enclosures. They feature a full back box. And they either replace a ceiling tile or they are placed in between joists in the ceiling. The full back box is required in the plenum ceiling to meet the code requirements. And this is a preferred example, or I'm sorry, it's a preferred solution in hospitals to address infection control concerns. So equipment can be accessed in these enclosures without concerns of moving dust or particles or contaminants into or from that interstitial space into patient care areas. The example on the right is a good example of behavioral health application. Notice that it has a rounded edge, it has minimal openings, it has an impact resistant dome, it has a lock that can secure everything. And so those address a lot of the concerns for those applications. There's a lot of other facilities that benefit from physical security or easy access to cabling. So consider the cost of downtime um, from equipment theft or damage to that cabling when you're considering placement of APs. This is some examples of Oberon's in-plane mounts. These are very similar to the enclosures before, but these are not locking. These use spring trims, and there's versions that have a full back box, and then there's versions that don't. The version on the bottom left doesn't have a full back box, and that would be fine in a cloud ceiling. Here's some examples of the high point open ceiling mounts. Um, these are non-locking mounts, different versions that can be used to suspend APs from different types of open ceilings and different types of structures. So there's versions with beam clamps for trusses. The boxes themselves are often a large scissor type box that can attach to hanging conduit, but it's large enough inside that it can house the cabling and make the network connections hidden. There's also large plates that can be suspended either from very high ceilings or in warehouses or big box type environments where your ceiling might be 30 feet or more high. The AP is going to be about half that height and you can suspend it on a wire. Final piece is plastic covers, which you see in the lower left-hand corner. You should not paint an AP directly, but if you want to conceal an AP or you need a finish that matches something other than the AP, you can use a cover to do that. Here's our H-plane right angle mounts. The version on the left is a high-end stylish solution. It has a spring trim to mount the AP, and it has a locking enclosure. It's plastic and it's paintable, and there's a dome option available too, in case you want to hide the AP completely inside a dome. The middle version is similar. It's a metal bracket. It's a non-locking door. And the version on the right is a simple L bracket for just basic mounting. There's some basic enclosures for wall mounting, a mix of a couple product lines, in plane on the left, high bar in the middle, and sky bar on the right. So in plane is a recess mount to go inside walls or ceilings where you would completely recess the AP into the wall or ceiling, and then the cover is a snap-on cover and it can be painted to match the finish. In the middle is the enclosure we saw before that was color matched. Those can be those are locking enclosures. They can be available with an opaque or a clear cover, and they'll fit right over a telecom outlet. On the right side is one of the environmental enclosures, and you can see that's completely sealed, and those can be used indoor or outdoor. So if you have a washdown environment, you want to go with that. Okay, that's a quick overview of our product line. I want to make you aware that CPI's Knowledge Vault is our company solution with webinars for yourselves and for industry professionals. And we cover a wide range of topics, including data center, right on through to wireless. And a lot of these courses are AIA and BICSI accredited. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please direct them to us at chatsworthproducts.com.